Oh my
I
gosh.
think we're up to 30 people watching.
We're popular.
Okay, you're ready. Go ahead.
All right,
Oh,
thanks,
no,
Rob.
60.
All right, we're ready to begin the work session, and for any public who are listening in, there is no public comment during the work session. It's strictly for board members. Any questions you might have, please wait until the regular session starts. Thank you. All right, Pat, turn it over to you.
So we're going to begin tonight's work session. I'm handing this over to the school climate team. We thought that it's really important for the board members to know, be updated on what the school climate team has been involved in, thanks to the school climate transformation grant that they've been working on all through the spring and the summer months. This is similar, very much like the presentation that we shared with the staff on September 3rd when we had our opening presentation to the staff and updated them. So I'm going to hand this over to this members on the team. I have them listed. It's Christy Jansen, Randa Hogate, Erica Hulk, Angelica Magazoo, Katie Zek, and Jake, will you ever forgive me? I forgot to include your name as a member of the team, and you're an important member of the team, so my apologies. I am going to hand it over. I believe, Erica, you are beginning. Am I correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Erica, take it away.
Awesome. So I'm Erica Hulk. I'm the art teacher in the elementary school, and we're here to present our work that we did over the past few months and over the summer, and kind of show you where we're going.
The school climate team consists of a variety of stakeholders, including instructional and non-instructional staff, parents, and doctoral students from Rowan's Center for Access, Success, and Equity, also known as CASE.
So at Logan, we love our learning goals. So we're starting you off with our learning goals for tonight. So by the end of the presentation, you'll be able to see where the school climate team started at the very beginning, to get an update on our work during the summer, and to also know where we're going as a district, see our next steps, and see the transition from the PBS system over to the PBIS system.
Hi, I'm Angelica Magazoo, and I'm a middle school ELA teacher. So we're going to look at some data, discipline data. Who are we statistically as a district? The equity grant, the school climate grant that is, will give us the ability to dig deep into our discipline data in order to recognize and address the disproportionality of students of color and, as you will see, males throughout the district when it comes to discipline. So we have our current student race demographic data, about 3/4 white and about 25% Black students, multiracial students, Latinx students, and Asian students. And you also have the socioeconomic status of throughout the district. This is the data by of the staff race data, clearly overwhelmingly white, with a small percentage of staff members of color. Go on. So before breaking down, having the staff look at the discipline data with each of the schools, we asked them to consider these questions to analyze the data. So they were really thinking in their breakouts groups. This we provided for them during the professional development days before school started. 1, is there an equity problem in our school? 2, what is it about our people, our policies, practices that contribute to this inequity? 3, which equitable practices can address this discipline inequity? And 4, who is at the table when decisions are made about our school system? So think about the years prior to this grant, who usually is involved in making those decisions. And then a big question that we're going to be asking ourselves in the future, I think we're all going to be thinking about this a lot, is did the equity strategies decrease our discipline disparities? So at Center Square School, for if you're looking at discipline referrals by race, I'm going to look at over to the right. We have a large percentage of multiracial students who have received discipline referrals. This is the 2019-2020 school year up until about whenever we left in March, around February, March. And then, so you'll see clearly male students are more likely to be referred than female students. For LES, we have a large percentage of Black students, 33.7%, who have had discipline referrals. And then sorry, you can go on. And again, we have a larger percentage of male students referred. And then LMS, we have a large percentage of both Black and multiracial students who are referred, who are disproportionately referred for discipline referrals. And again, you'll see on the next slide that we see that common theme of males over females. So throughout the district, there is clearly a disparity when it comes to discipline referrals. A greater percentage of students of color and males are referred pretty across the board in each school. And we also, just for some background knowledge of how the conversations with our staff went down, it was pretty well received. People were, if they were surprised, they really were looking at the data. We had norms. You can just read them here: speak your truth, stay engaged, experience discomfort, give and get grace. I feel like we have been all hearing that a lot, and it's something we all should be keeping in mind right now. So the staff, they really participated and took this seriously.
Thanks, Ange. Hi, this is Jake Neary from the technology department. I'm going to talk a little bit about what our team did to gather data. As Angelica just touched on, and as you all know, we've stood in front of you and highlighted some of the amazing things that we do within the district. But obviously looking at that data, it's glaring, and we recognize that there's some serious issues, especially as she mentioned, with the disproportionality of discipline for our minoritized students, and then also with our discipline for our male students. So the one thing that that we recognize, and the grant is really helping us kind of reflect on, is we need to not give a voice to all of our stakeholders, because we recognize that everyone has a voice, but just make a space for everyone's voice to be heard. So with that, Sarah Bell, if you don't mind going to the next slide, what we did, and as part of the grant, is we decided to open up surveys and more critical feedback to our community members, our families of Logan Township, and stop kind of just doing things internally. So that first survey was presented to the community back in January. It consisted of 50 questions, and we had hundreds of responses. With the help of the Rowan Doc students and the climate team, we were able to kind of filter down all those responses by doing an analysis, and we had some takeaways here that I'll highlight. A few of the favorable responses that we saw among community members, staff, and students is in the areas of bullying and physical safety. They felt that we were doing a good job with those topics. There was a weakness for us was social emotional learning, and then mental health across. When we say across all four groups, we mean across the four different stakeholders that we surveyed. What we looked at as a team after kind of sifting through those hundreds of responses is we had a couple questions. We wanted to, when we send out our next one through the grant, we want to have more demographic information so we can highlight whose voices are being heard. And then obviously we're looking at serious issues with discipline and disparities among our minoritized groups. So we really want to center the voices around those groups. And then as we can kind of move on to the next slide, Sarah, I want to touch on a couple other ones. So after that first survey back in January, Obviously, if we have community members on here, this is no surprise. There were a slew of additional surveys that came out. The first round, we tried to keep it general under the guidance of the grant, and that question really revolved around what does a happy and healthy school look like? Open-ended. We had some pretty high return numbers, 70% students, 55% of parents responded, and then staff, 73%. Our second round, we kind of narrowed it down a little bit. We asked them to rank the 10 values that we picked from that initial question. And as you can see, the student dropped off a little bit, but the parents and staff increased. And then lastly, our final round of surveys, which went out in the final week of school. We know that's a tough time. We weren't thrilled with the return rate, but obviously we recognize the timing, and what we did to kind of counteract that, as opposed to just doing an email survey, we had climate team members make calls to households to kind of get some verbal, more informal feedback to define the top 4 values. And I think that's a good segue into who is ever going to be speaking next that'll highlight those 4 values.
Thanks, Jake. This is Randa Hogate. I'm a 4th grade ELA teacher. And I'm going to touch on, so we are one of actually we are the only participating district as part of this grant that has already incorporated PBS in our schools. And we previously had our core values. Sarah, you can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. In the elementary schools, we had chosen as a PBS team, safe, responsible, respectful, and kind. And that translated to the middle school as responsible, respectful, and ready to learn. So you'll see that on the following slide, we have kind of made a shift in some ways, thanks to all of the feedback from the stakeholders. We've kept some similar core values, but we've made a bit of a shift. You'll see that safe and respectful are still strong values held by all of our stakeholders. But we've also shifted to academically engaging and inclusive. The phrase academically engaging, we felt encapsulated all of the feedback that had to do with keeping the rigor in our academics, but also making it engaging for all students, holding the high standards, but also giving students choice. We are still playing with the phrasing to make academically engaging roll off the tongue a little bit more easily, especially for our youngest learners, but we're not looking to change the value. We're just exploring how we can rephrase that term. And then also inclusive is our 4th core value, which fits really nicely with everything we're doing, especially with this equity grant. So the following slides in this section will address the recurring themes from the survey and explain a little bit more about each of those.
Hi, everyone. This is Katie Zach. I am one of the 3rd grade teachers at LES. So after narrowing down our 4 core values, we then wanted our school community to tell us their definitions of what it means to be safe, respectful, inclusive, and academically engaging. And as Jake mentioned, when we were gathering these definitions, we did call parents individually, emailed and surveyed staff and students. And after gathering this data, we found that our school community defines safety in 2 parts: physical safety in terms of cleanliness regarding COVID, as well as emergency preparedness, and then emotional safety in terms of making sure that mental health of all stakeholders is a priority. On the next slide, you'll see that we describe how this definition informs the relationships between all stakeholders. And having this description is something that was a requirement of the grant. But that is our school community's definition of safety.
Next, we have academically engaging. And we broke this down into what it looks like and then what it feels like based on all of the feedback from the stakeholders. So it looks, it's very multifaceted in what it looks like. Collaboration, hands-on, project-based learning, using technology, meeting students where they are was a big one. especially with parents and teachers, if I recall correctly, and multidisciplinary. What it feels like, fun. We heard that over and over again, fun learning from the students, challenging, interesting, connected to the real world, and everyone's needs are met. And I'm going to pass it to Randa to describe the different relationships.
Thank you. And as Katie touched on, the grant did specify that we needed to define how each of these core values affected our relationships. So you'll see a breakdown of how academically engaged affects the relationship from student to student, from adult to adult, from adult to student, and back and forth, student to adult, and also between the district and the community and families. And one thing as you're looking over that we want to note is that the concept of project we discussed in our committee, that concept needs to shift to being more of a real world project-based learning, more relevant projects, and get away from those old school projects that we think of it like dioramas and posters and mobiles and things like that, but make it more relevant to real world problem solving, project-based learning.
So our school community defines respect as being mutual and reciprocal between all stakeholders, and as treating others as you want to be treated. That was the original definition that we gathered from our stakeholders. However, after our 2-day training with the school climate team that was hosted by Dr. Shelley Zion and the Rowan doctoral students, we learned that treating others as they want to be treated is the more culturally responsive take on that golden rule, and it's actually called the platinum rule. And it puts empathy and recognizing others' perspectives at the forefront of that definition. And our definition of respect also includes that all voices are heard and valued. On the next slide, we see again how this definition informs all relationships between the stakeholders, and specifically this definition of respect that we gather from the stakeholders emphasizes that everyone takes the time to understand student and family backgrounds so that all cultures, experiences, languages, and ways of knowing are valued and respected.
Hi, everybody. It's Christy Jansen. I'm here to talk a little bit about the inclusive area of focus for our community. So within our committee, we worked to define inclusivity, and we worked to redefine inclusivity just to make it a little bit more culturally responsive, like Katie had said before. So inclusive, rather than just being open-minded, we wanted to take a more active role of developing a safe space for all, as well as not welcoming everyone into the community, as well as recognizing and addressing our own personal biases. Supporting the curriculum to emphasize different cultures, but it's not only just that, it's also making sure that we incorporate multiple perspectives within our curriculum so that we are fostering a feeling and development of empathy within our students. Empowering all stakeholders. So Jake said this at the beginning, everybody has a voice. We need to empower all of our stakeholders to use that voice, and that falls along the lines of inclusivity and accepting the differences. And we feel really strongly about the differences that we are accepting of in our school in terms of ability and in terms of students receiving special services within our school. You can go to the next one. So we're working to define what inclusivity looks like in all three of these areas. But as an overall culminating definition, we're looking at accepting of all differences, feeling welcomed, valued, accepted, safe, and creating a safe space for all.
Hey, it's Erica again. So we also asked the question, what kind of rewards and consequences work best with our students? So this next couple slides are about that. So the first exciting thing is that staff actually had a pretty good idea of what our students like, because our answers kind of reflected the student responses. So if you look, we asked what rewards would help our students best, would help with that. If you look, the biggest piece of that pie is student choice rewards. So things like choosing to have extra recess time or lunch with the teacher. The second biggest part of that was purchased prizes. We were joking a lot because one of the kids asked for an Xbox gift card. So our kids, I think that we have tons of money to buy them prizes, which I thought was hilarious. And then if you look, the next one for our students is the tangible awards, which is like pause tickets and honor roll and stuff like that. And the last couple are acknowledgement. We thought acknowledgement was a bigger to our students, but we also, you're gonna see the next slide, we talked about the parents. So we'll talk about that in a second. But the kids, actually, we had a couple middle school students that said self-motivation. They just wanted to learn and wanted to do their best. And then the parents' responses. And I'll start with the acknowledgement part too, because it is the biggest percentage. But we also were considering maybe as a staff, maybe the acknowledgement for the parents is big. If we maybe, instead of acknowledging the students constantly, is maybe to have some positive emails home or positive phone calls home. Maybe the students would see acknowledgement as a bigger reward if we were including the parents. So that was something we thought about. But yeah, that's what they thought the most. And then we also have equal pieces where the tangible awards, student choice, and purchase prizes. And the consequences. So again, this was something that we asked all the stakeholders in one of our surveys. So our students, the top three that said worked best for them was one, loss of privileges, like taking away tablets or whatever it is. The second one was detention, suspension, or SAC, more of a discipline in the school. And then 3 was communicate with the parents. Then if you look at parents and guardians, the first thing again was loss of privileges. I think that was a big one. And then it goes with discussing the behaviors with the students. And we actually thought that was a really interesting thing, because a lot of the parents, when we were calling them, were saying, hey, like, if you talk to my child about why this is not an acceptable behavior, it would probably be more likely for them to not repeat that same behavior. So that was something we talked a lot about too. Preventative measures, and then calling the parents and involving the principal. And for staff, we were big on the preventative measures and loss of privileges and communicating with the parents. So what's next for the district?
Hi, this is Randa Hogate again, and one of the things that we want to take a look at is how all of this connects to our mission statement that was created not that long ago. And so one of the things that we noticed was that so the parents were not involved and the community was not involved in developing our components of PBIS years ago. But now that we've included all stakeholders, we have seen a better reflection of what our community feels and values as to be our core values. And the cool thing about this is that this exercise that we've done has really been reaffirming, because indirectly what we seemed to do was take our mission statement apart, kind of dissect it, and then reassemble it using different words to make that connection through the surveys home and to the students and the guardians and the staff. And by doing that, our mission statement really became much more alive and relevant. And you can see that the core values at the top, our old core values of PBIS, or prior to making them culturally responsive, are up there in the clouds on our mission statement. But the great thing that we noticed was that adding our new core values really connected to those two circled parts of our mission statement. So that equitable access on our mission statement graphic really goes along with our new inclusive value. And on the mission statement graphic, where it talks about every child is capable of learning, directly connects to our academically engaged core value. So it was really eye-opening to see that the work that we've done over the last several years really does connect to the work that we're doing now.
And our next steps. So what are we going to do next now that we showed you the work that we've been doing? The first big thing on our list is to redesign the matrix for all different settings, including online now that we're remote. And we actually have a committee that's working on the matrix to change from our safe, kind, respectful, responsible to our new matrix. And we were talking about how are we going to address some of these things? Like we could say how to be safe when you go to the cafeteria, but how do we address academically engaging if they're in the bathroom? So we're trying to figure out how we're going to redesign that matrix. That's one thing that we're working on currently right now, providing more professional development to continue our journey, to make sure that we're creating a culturally responsive school climate. We did some of this training right before we came back to school in the fall. Make sure we address racial injustices and listen to various points of view, and also be honest with where we are. We also have a newsletter committee where we're sending out newsletters to our community to make sure that we're being honest with where we are and letting everybody know what we're doing. And where do we go next with our knowledge? Making sure we uphold the value of safe. That was something that came up a lot in our surveys, definitely during times of COVID, making sure that everything's safe, both mentally, but also physically for our students. Continue to develop an inclusive curriculum with multiple perspectives, which we actually have a team, the ICMP team, that is working hard on that and has been working hard on that all summer. Bridge the gap between how parents and staff think of consequences. And we also talked about the discipline referrals earlier with Angelica, how we're going to address those and what we can do to change those patterns. And we actually brought that up with the staff. I think somebody already said that. Angelica said that. So just even showing our staff those numbers was our first step in addressing it, and making sure that we're keeping an open communication with all the stakeholders and through those monthly newsletters that I was talking about before. So we're going to keep sending those out one a month to make sure everybody's updated and knows what's going on.
So ultimately, at the end of all of this 3-year grant, we want to be evaluating ourselves and asking, are the equity strategies we are implementing in our personal and professional lives decreasing our discipline disparity over this 3-year period? Because we have to make sure that this all pays off in the end and results in change to better our district and our students. So thank you. We'll take questions or comments.
Well, it's very impressive. I'm really impressed with all of the work you've put into this, and certainly want to commend all the members of the committee for what you've done up to this date. Any board members have any questions, comments?
So hi, good evening. This is Kimberly Reed. So I agree with Frank. I was very impressed by that. I've been aware of some of the things that were going on and also filled out maybe 1 or 2 of the surveys. I don't remember the third one, sorry. But I really do appreciate all the time that you've put into this. My question is in regards to, I guess it's together, but I guess it's a 2-parter. Was there a pie chart that showed the makeup of whether the males, I guess showed the race makeup of the males? So are you able to identify the racial makeup of the males that are being disciplined, or did I miss that pie chart?
I do not think we can, but I wonder, this is all from Alma's data. So is Jake here? Jake,
Yeah. Hey,
could you
Kim.
answer that?
Yeah, absolutely. I created these from, like, as Angelica mentioned, through our SIS. We do have some limitations with that. But one thing that I'm happy to announce is through the grant, we have a new referral tracking system. It's called Swiss. So we'll be implementing that sometime this school year, hopefully when we potentially have students back in the building and we firmed up our schedule. And with that reporting software, we have a slew of other options where we can filter in multiple data criteria. So we can do race, gender, socioeconomic status, and we can cluster all of these different graphics. So we're really hoping that platform will help us guide making some decisions moving forward. If it's something that the board and you are really interested in doing, I can probably get some data together from last year. You guys just you let me know and we can make it happen.
So I don't want you guys to do extra work, especially if you have a system that's going to make it easier for you. I guess my question was more so out of curiosity, but also to help kind of direct you, because to say that males are disproportionately being disciplined is a very broad statement. And it could lead to so many different things. I mean, we all know love men to death, love boys to death, but they're different. You know, their attention span is different. So there could be a lot of factors. But if you're able to actually drill down and figure out if the disproportionality is a certain race or if it's a certain socioeconomic status, that might help lead you down the path of where you need to go, as opposed to starting out so broad and then getting so mired in the weeds that you end up, you're not really sure where to take the data and how to find resolutions to decrease that number.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Christy joined me at the beginning of this summer, and we sat through the training course, and I think it was eye-opening for us. And as we obviously pass it along to Mrs. Haney and the rest of the team, I think it's going to be a great asset moving forward.
Yeah, Kim, I'm just going to add in, that's our goal, is to drill down further. And that's why we, as Jake said, we're very excited about moving into this new Swiss database. So it'll give us that, because you are exactly right. We need to drill down further so that we are making decisions based on actual data.
Okay. So then my second question, I look forward to that data once you have enough of it. So then my second part of that question is, do you have any, for those of you on the committee who are educators in the classroom and you're seeing the students, do you have any educated guess in regards to why that is? Do you already kind of have some suppositions as to why that's happening? Is it an environmental thing? Is it, you know, I'm just curious, do you have any?
This is Angelica again. Oh, sorry, Erica, I'll let you go.
No, you go first. Go ahead.
All right. So I don't know if it's from I think I do, from my classroom, but also just mostly from being a student, going through the school system in New Jersey in the United States. I think with boys and with students of color, it is just a lot of almost like misunderstandings or people not seeing eye to eye on values or rules that we enforce in schools traditionally. And I think that just, what does respect look like may be different in different households. And I think we're only, for years and years, for generations, have been looking at a lot of white females in the classroom. I would say, like, I don't want to misspeak, but old school, traditional American values, but that means different things to different people. And I think we all have to just be aware of that, that it may not really be a child disrespecting you. Sometimes it is. And sometimes it just may be misinterpreted, the misbehavior. Another data point we could look at is students with disabilities as well being. I think we've talked about that a lot. We have that data, I believe, if we wanted to break it down.
Angelica kind of said a little bit of actually what I was about to say, and so I'm happy you went first. But to add to what she said, we were also sharing a lot of articles that we also got from our own doc students and from Shelley Zion, Dr. Shelley Zion. Just articles about discipline and what we're disciplining. It was almost like the articles were questioning, like, why are you disciplining that? There was one article where it was talking about two girls in a classroom, and one was braiding the other one's hair, and the teacher called out, to keep your hands to yourself, or whatever the article was saying. So it was very much like eye-opening. A lot of the articles that we're reading and that we're sharing with our staff is to almost question, why is this something that needs to be disciplined? Is it something that you're seeing, and because it's textbook, keep your hands to yourself, is that necessarily something that you should be disciplining? And to start looking at yourself and saying, is this really a problem or something that I need to address? Or is it maybe my own bias or my own thought process and why I think I'm doing this. So I think a lot of the articles we're sharing and a lot of questions we're asking of our staff as we're going through this journey, it's really just to be very self-reflective and to think of those things before you do them. And hopefully, and kind of when we brought this in September, when we started the school year off, hopefully just asking those questions helps open up their minds as we continue giving professional development to our staff and continuing this journey.
And I think to piggyback off of what Erica was saying and Angelica as well, one of the things we discussed too was that the, so to speak, old school norms and values in school come from old traditional white Christian male written norms and values. So that's why we want to make the shift to make it culturally responsive.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you look at the founding fathers, and the history, we want it to be more culturally responsive than it's been over the course of history and make that shift. So some of the school norms and rules, like keep your hands to yourself, as Erica referred to from that one article, that's kind of where that platinum rule comes in. Well, keep your hands to yourself. Really what we want to say is you're not going to use your hands to harm others, but
Right.
if braiding somebody's hair is soothing to that person when they're having a rough day, then by all means, we should allow that. That's not a disrespectful thing if it's welcomed by both parties involved.
Right. No, that's excellent. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from the board?
Yeah, this is Lene. I know we're running short on time, but I just had a quick question about when you're reporting on the racial breakdown of the staff, what exactly does that include? Is that classroom staff? Is that all staff in the buildings? How did you arrive at that number?
That is, Linnea, I can answer that. That is anybody who's employed by our district. So it's aides and teachers.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Well, I certainly want to thank all of you for presenting tonight. It was really informative, and I put a nice picture, I guess, of where we are, where we came from, and where we're at today. And I think, would you please pass on our thanks to the rest of the members of the committee for everything they put in today?
Yep. And I just want to say, as the superintendent, how proud I am of this group that presented tonight and of the work of the school climate team. And I am so grateful that during these cuts in budget, as well as during the COVID pandemic, that we have the ability to still engage in this type of serious work because of the grant that we have. So I am blessed. We are all blessed. And thank you, Christy, Randa, Erica, Angelica, Jake, and Katie for your presentation tonight.
Yes, thank you again.
Okay, good night to that school climate team. We're going to move on to the goals. That is on the second on the agenda. So I've listed them here. It's time for us to develop our goals for this coming school year. So they're very similar to last year's goals. I think what I'll do quickly is move to equity, and you can see the goal 2, where that the whole grant and every aspect of the grant is supporting all of those activities and all of those goals that all of those learning opportunities that we have, so that we become and develop a more culturally responsive climate for both our staff and students. So they're pretty self-explanatory, especially after that presentation. Moving back to goal 1, the achievement goal that we always have, we're cloaking it. Can you move back up, Sarah? We're cloaking it a little bit in the keeping in mind that we are in the middle of a pandemic, not knowing what that is going to provide us in an opportunity of when we're going to be back fully in person. So that's why we're really talking about the importance of daily attendance and engagement as criteria of how we're going to measure student achievement this year. We don't know what's happening with state testing. We don't know what's even the iReady assessment that we usually we tried to use last year. We were going to be using last year. We're not sure about being able to. We are going to start iReady assessment. We didn't want to set a goal on that in this pandemic. So that's why that would be my and our administrators' recommendation to use for student achievement, because engagement, whether we are remote or partially hybrid or in person, that's what we really have to focus on. And it ties into our academically engaging new value that we just shared. And then if we move down to goal three is exactly what we did last year, managing the budget. That became a year-long goal of ours that we had to continuously be involved in. Activities throughout the whole year by the administration was focused on constantly thinking about how we be fiscally responsible, so that we are, when we are faced with the $900,000 reduction in state aid that we are being faced with for the next coming year, that we are prepared for that as much as possible. So those are my the administration's recommendation for the 3 goals. I don't have that on the board agenda for approval this month. We're going to put it on next one so that it gives you time, food for thought, reflection, feedback between now and then. Thoughts on any of those 3 goals from the board?
That just on goal number 1, if things change, when and if things change, we can expand that to include student testing, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
It's just very nebulous right now, so that's
Yes,
why.
yeah.
Okay. Then Sarah, do you want to move down to the next section, the business office?
Yep. I believe most items were already addressed in a weekend memo. Does anybody have any questions?
Doesn't sound that way, Sarah.
I guess not. I'll move on then.
That means we're pretty thorough in our detail.
Writing memos, yeah.
I would say so. And then the digital divide, that's money that we're getting to help us cover our remote learning costs.
That was also detailed, just reminding everyone, that was detailed in the weekend memo. And the one part that I forgot to mention is that we, besides what was mentioned in there, is also that we're spending money on Kajits, which are the remote access for community members in case, especially now during remote learning and when we go hybrid. Kajits has proven to be valuable to certain community members who don't have access to the internet. So we are purchasing more hotspots. That's what Kajits are, using the digital divide funds, as well as Chromebooks for our staff. Okay, personnel. Oh, comment, questions on digital divide funds? Okay, moving on to personnel, that also was discussed, and you'll be asked to approve the, sad to say, the retirement of our art teacher, the resignation of one of our classroom aides, and then, not sad to say, but a maternity leave of one of our LES teachers, and that's all listed in the motion on the regular motions on the regular agenda. And then the final thing is just letting you know that School Boards is having a virtual conference from October 20th to 22nd. So if you are interested in registering for that, you probably have already received ongoing information about that. So please let Lisa, our board secretary, know, and she'll register you. Correct, Lisa?
Correct. And if you can let me know soon, because it's cheaper, of course, to sign up earlier than later.
Okay. Any other questions before we move to our next presentation? Okay. So we're going from school climate team, and we're moving into a presentation that Bev Green, our principal of Center Square, Laura Flynn, our supervisor of special services, and I will be presenting to you. So I'm going to ask Sarah to pull up that presentation. Bev and Laura, are you on?
Yes, I'm here.
Good.
I'm here too, Pat. Hi, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
You want to start at the beginning, Sarah?
I'm so sorry. I thought I was.
There we go. We're going back. That's good.
Okay. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Forgot I was in there earlier.
That's fine. We're fine. Okay, so the three of us, these three administrators, are going to be sharing with you our transition, our restart plan. And we're hoping that the data that we have here and the rationale for why we are proposing this makes sense to the board members, so that we start moving some of our students back in. Let me just, before we start, I do want to thank Brian Bowen the other night at the Finance Committee. He did kind of poke me a little bit gently, as the board members do at times, and say, what kind of data are we using to make our decisions? Are we just using the color coding that the DOH has provided us in the past? And so as a result of that question, we probed and we dug down deeper, and we drilled down to get more data to kind of defend and support our rationale. So I share that with you, and I thank Brian for that, those gentle nudges. Okay, next slide. Okay, so just to remind you and remind anyone who's listening about what the recommendation was for that the board approved for us to go remote learning through the first marking period. The original plan had, obviously, as I said, students and staff interacting remotely, and that is where we are at presently. Our primary focus has been on getting good at remote learning. There are so many enhancements that we've put in place, and also with live sessions and Google Classroom being moved down to even the younger grades, that teachers and students needed more time to get good at remote learning. And so by us going remote, that has been our primary focus. And part of our original recommendation was that we had hoped back in August that the staff could transition back into the school building in the final 4 weeks of the first marking period to get used to the protocols, the safety protocols. And then the final part of that recommendation was that towards the second half of the marking period, depending on the COVID data, we might be able to bring back our highest needs students, a student population. So that was our original goal, and that was part of our original recommendation back in August. And then we go to the next slide. We know right now that the reason we made the decision to go all remote was it was based on the health and safety of all stakeholders, based on the data we had at that time. And at that time, back in August, clear health guidelines were just beginning to trickle down from the New Jersey Department of Health. So we made the best decision that we believed was best for the health and safety of all of our stakeholders with the information we had at that time. I'm going to pass this now, I believe, am I right, Laura, going over to you?
Yes. So next slide. So one of the things that we talked about was when Pat, Bev, and I were talking about bringing students back was, what does the current data look like? One of the things that we wanted to maybe take a look at, obviously, as shown by this slide, is the number of cases in the state with regards to age group. So this is the entire state. This information is recent and provided by the New Jersey Department of Health. And if you can look to see the age group of 0 to 4, less than 1% of the cases in the state are in that age range. And then the next age range up, we want to take a look at also, because that would include some of the students that I'm thinking about with regards to the LES, LMS students are in that age range, and that's also a low number of 3% of total cases in the state. So just making sure that we are aware and everyone else is aware that we are looking at risk factors, and they appear to be low. Of course, we'll look at this and all of the data as we continue to plan, but this is what things are looking like right now. Next slide. So then definitely important to take a look at what Gloucester County looks like in regards to age group and recent information that we were able to get from the Gloucester County Department of Health website. So again, looking at the numbers in the county, you can see clearly that the age ranges that we're referring to with 0 to 4, 5 to 9, and 10 to 17, that the numbers are low. And that the age range that is most concerning is the 18 to 22 ages.
And Laura, before you move on, I just want to reference that this is just data that's been collected most recently from September 1st to September 11th. That's the most current data that we were able to put our hands on. And in that 5 to 9-year-old range, the one child that was tested positive for COVID is a 9-year-old. So I wanted to reference that.
Okay. Next slide. Thanks. So then we wanted to, we're provided with all this information and we thought, wow, this is great. We really can take a very close look at when, like say recently, the county itself was moved from green to yellow, but what does that really mean within the towns themselves? So when you look at the towns and the number of cases of reported cases of positive COVID, we're looking at, Glassboro and Washington Township being the highest numbers, and then a drop from there. We're obviously looking at Logan as being one of the townships that have the lowest number. So we were able to even look closer and identify the 4 individuals that were tested, that have tested positive from that same time frame, from September 1st to September 11th, that they were in that 19 to 20 age range. So we're just making sure that we pay close attention to what that really means when the county goes yellow. It's most likely due to certain townships, and the remaining townships have low numbers.
And Laura, before we move forward, Sarah, could you move back one slide? I did want to mention that what's glaring, I think should be glaring to all of us, is you probably heard, you might have heard tonight on the news that Gloucester County spiked. And if you look right here, the 18 to 22-year-olds, those students, the 187, those people who tested positive are in the 18 to 22 range. And then if you attach that to the next slide, and you see that the next slide, Sarah, can you move to the next slide? That's right. You can see that that 97 of those children, those COVID positive cases are in Glassboro. So you can clearly make the connection that they are college students, probably attending Rowan University. Right. So I wanted to draw your attention to that.
Right. Okay. So then we also decided, well, I mean, we can look at Logan, but it's obviously not isolated, and there's all. It's important to pay attention to the surrounding townships. So then we included this data on a separate graph to show all of the townships near us, and that the numbers continue to be, low, and therefore maybe putting us in this category of like a lower risk as far as positive COVID cases. As of recent, it's like every 2 weeks, right, Pat, that the website's updated?
It's actually every week, but it's delayed. So we will be coming Friday for the previous week.
Okay. So with that in mind, knowing that we can safely move forward, we want to talk about moving forward with a certain group of students that we've decided to identify them as our highest need students. So these students are a manageable number, small group of students with these guys in mind: our special needs self-contained students, our pre-kindergarten students, and our kindergarten students. The dates are listed there as what we're proposing for the start dates for special needs. Self-contained and pre-kindergarten would be October 12th, and then kindergarten October 19th. So I just want to talk a little bit about why I feel as the supervisor of special services, why it's important to bring back our students with disabilities with the highest needs. And to make that distinction and to make and to talk to you guys about the reasoning behind this decision. So, I mean, we all know that, in general, this remote learning environment is not ideal for all students. We've all agreed upon that, and that Pat said we are doing a lot of things well with regards to remote learning. And I definitely want to preface these next 2 slides with saying that I do know, although it's not in my realm to always know what's going well in the world of student learning, because oftentimes students with disabilities present as students that need, obviously different learning environments. We have classrooms and teachers and related services folks that are all hired, and their purpose is to provide these students with these accommodations. But this remote learning environment is not, it's just not conducive to a lot of what these guys need in regards to face-to-face. So the first important thing, I think, although it was hard to prioritize and put these reasons in a hierarchy, but the first thing I would say would be that if we brought students back to in-person instruction, these students in particular, that we can resume in-person related services and therapy. So that means, we can have in-person speech language, OT, PT, and counseling resume. Although teletherapy was and is a very effective way to meet the needs of these students in related service areas, it certainly does not come close to how an in-person and face-to-face contact would be. So then the other reason that we believe students with disabilities should be returning is the importance that we feel that they need that face-to-face connection and consistent routine and structure that the teacher can provide, those interactions that teachers provide, immediate feedback that teachers can provide is just really how they learn best. Another important factor is that we're trying to, as best as we can, make sure that we're targeting the progress towards the goals that are on their IEP. And one way that we know that the child's responding to our teaching is by progress monitoring. And that through remote learning is just very challenging. So in person would make it much easier for us to assess students' progress. Next slide.
Laura, can I stop you just for a second?
Yeah, sure.
Frank, it's 8 o'clock now. Do we have to move into the regular session and then continue this presentation?
Yes, we do. Thank you, Pat.
You're welcome.
Right. Well, I only have 10 more slides on reasons why. Is that okay with everybody?
Frank, you want to start?
Laura, you're so funny.
Yes.
So I just want to, just focus on a couple more things, but I just every day is spent.
Laura, we're not stopping you. We just have to officially.
Laura, you can come back. We'll continue at the regular session. I just have to open it up because we advertised that we start the regular meeting at 8 o'clock.
Got it.
Okay. So Sarah, can you just go to the agenda, the regular meeting agenda, please?
Yeah.
All right, so we opened up the meeting. Advocate notice has been provided by the posting of notices with the township clerk, the South Jersey Times, and all board members having been notified. A regular meeting is being held virtually due to the COVID-19, and I think directions were posted on the board website.
Yes.
As presiding officer, I'm waiving the rules when necessary to maintain an orderly operation, and we'll have only one public participation to pose any questions, whether listed on the agenda or not. The roll call.
Sarah, can you slide down?
Yes, sorry.
That's all right.
All right.
I'm trying to slide and it's not moving. There it goes. Just gonna make sure everybody's muted real quick. I can hear some background noise.
Oh, that was me.
Okay. Mr. Donnelly,
Here.
Mrs. Kegler,
Here.
Dr. Bowen,
Here.
Mrs. Hill,
Here.
Mrs. Lombardo,
Here.
Mrs. Mason,
Here.
Mrs. Reed,
Here.
Ms. Roan,
Here.
Mr. Russell,
Time you have to unmute.
Mr. Russell,
His picture's there, Sarah, so I'm assuming he's here.
yeah. I've seen him in. Okay, that's everybody.
All right, we can go back to Laura's presentation now on the on transition.
Laura, we're back.
Yeah. Okay. Just a couple more things. I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that that the students with attention and focus weaknesses, students with impulse control, difficulties with concentrating, like all of those things make it very difficult for them to sit in front of a computer screen, pay attention to instructions, follow instructions. The teachers are, and we've known this from the spring, and it's continuing this year as well, that that these students definitely need more one-on-one or more small group, or just the ability to just hear the teacher repeat and go over things. Also, you know, the ability to have movement breaks, that differentiated instruction is important. Like all these things are just really necessary and are just best in person. Also, you know, mastering skills, providing that multi-sensory specialized instruction virtually is just also challenging, and it's just going to you know, be one more thing that the students will be able to have offered to them if they are in person. And then just finally, just that lack of personal connection that occurs with virtual instruction, and that how children are, you know, sometimes have difficulty interpreting, you know, navigating that virtual classroom and understanding what the teachers trying to, you know, get across, what the teachers instructing them on. They need that in-person body language that they can get cues from, tone and volume when they're in person, when someone's speaking to them, and then that real eye contact is even more important for our guys in these classes. So yeah, I mean, there's just a ton of reasons for us to really strongly consider this, returning these guys back to school earlier than later. And I'm really hoping that you'll support this decision. Next slide. So I just have a proposed schedule of what this would look like for this hybrid model. It's actually a 4-day model for students in these classes, where they'll attend in person Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday for half day, 8:15 to 12:15. And then Wednesday would be an all remote day. And then the afternoons would then still entail, you know, time spent on iReady and asynchronous and synchronous special areas. Next slide. Yeah, so.
And Laura, before we leave you, just to clarify, these are the self-contained students. So they are multiple disabled, our language learning disabilities, and our PSD classes.
That's correct, yep.
Okay, these are the ones that are self-contained and are very needy students.
Yes.
Okay. We're going to move on to Bev now.
Pat, just a real quick question.
Yes.
The numbers that you showed for the Gloucester County, those are a week late, so they wouldn't include any possible spike from Labor Day weekend, correct?
No, they're only up to September. Well, they are. The ones that we showed for Gloucester County go through September 11th. So the ones that I share with you in the weekend memos, that's the week behind. But the ones that I picked
Oh,
up
okay.
on the Gloucester County website, Department of Health, that was specific to that had listed all of the age groups that we then created the bar graph from. That was through September 11th.
Okay, but it's still Labor Day. This Labor Day it's a 14-day quarantine period or 14-day?
Yeah, we're trying to have the quarantine in our district for 14 days after Labor Day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Bev?
Hello, everyone. So we're going to spend some time tonight talking about why are we proposing to bring pre-kindergarten and kindergarten students back. Next slide, Sarah, please. So when we created our remote schedule for pre-K, we kept in mind the importance of developmental appropriateness for our youngest students, which are 3, 4, and 5 in our program. And so how are our pre-K students being taught presently? Well, our students have short daily pre-recorded videos. We do not have our students on devices. We have pre-recorded morning meetings and read alouds for a small period of time. And we continue to use the high school curriculum in a modified version. It was important for us to ensure that we supplied any materials that we were referencing in the lessons to families, so families in their student packet picked up Play-Doh, it might be watercolors, it might be markers, all the necessary materials that we wanted our families to have to be able to support our students. And also we built in the component for this, the importance of family engagement, which is really important in some of the physical and gross motor skills development for our younger students. But that all being said, pre-K students on virtual learning has still provided some significant limitations in our ability to be able to support our youngest learners in the district. Next slide, please. And so we know that children develop a sense of self through interacting with others. They learn through friendships with peers and adults. So our pre-K students do not get a chance to see each other. They do not have a live interaction with their teachers. The ability to be able to engage and ask and answer questions with their adults and with the adults and peers. And also the ability to be able to support healthy relationships, hands-on experiences, opportunities to engage in active learning. And what's really important for us is that language development in young children. That's a major component of our pre-K program. So we have not been able to, this is the reason why we want to bring our pre-K students back earlier. Next slide, please. So this is a sample of our pre-K hybrid schedule. You'll see, as Laura mentioned, our students will report 4 days a week for AM and PM. We are going by the last name model, so A to L would attend in the AM, M to Z would attend in PM. And you'll see that the hybrid schedule involves students attending in person for 4 days a week for 2 hours and 30 minutes each day, as well as engaging in activities at home, which continue to support family engagement and language development. So they will still continue with the outdoor exploration activities that they currently have now, family engagement and the high school activities, but all those things will be done remotely from home. Next slide. Go ahead.
So the children will be coming in from 8 at the hour, proposal 8:40 to 11:10. Then they'll go home, have lunch and recess and rest time at home, and then do the activities that they've been engaged in during remote learning in the afternoon. And that would be opposite for your PM group, right?
Yes, if I'm an AM student, my day is from 8:40 to 11:10. Then I have a break in my schedule, one for students to get home, to get lunch, to be able to relax a little bit, and then still in the afternoon, still continue their day. And these particular components, the outdoor exploration, family engagement in high school, they're meant for adults to interact with children. So it's not like we want children to do these activities by themselves. It's meant to have an interaction with some sort of adult who's responsible for them. We do give parents flexibility, and when the time frame that they can complete it, we know that many parents are working. So although it says on the time, we do allow some flexibility to be able to support our working parents as well. But we found that these activities, which are new this year, we did not have those activities last year, has really been important to support many of our families and our students as well. Next slide. So the PM section that Pat alluded to. So if I'm PM, I have time in the morning that are remote, which is very similar to the afternoon for AM. And you'll see that the schedule basically mimics the morning session for the AM group. Those groups of students will come in at 1 o'clock. Their day would be from 1 to 3:30. And that's where we would be able to provide that morning meeting. Again, that live interaction, active learning, which is taking place, read aloud that the students can really engage with the teachers, fine motor, which is continuing to be important, small group, really being able to differentiate the needs of students during small group for our pre-K students, large group. And then we know that students need, we call it work time because they're actually working. Some people might say they're playing, but we call it working at Center Square School to engage in those exploratory activities regarding their interest level as well. Next slide, please. On Wednesdays, though, our pre-K students would have a remote-only schedule. So this schedule would mimic very similarly to what they're experiencing now. This schedule will be very familiar to our families. They still would have a pre-recorded video for the morning meeting from the teacher, read aloud, fine motor, continue with those outdoor exploration, family engagement, high scope mighty minutes. We also have the teacher check-in. So right now our pre-K teachers are checking in with parents twice a week to see how things are going, building a relationship, getting to know their students, getting to know the needs of the students, and also building more relationship with parents so they're willing to share additional information. So we're going to continue to have a checkout on Wednesdays. However, teachers will also check in on students on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday as well. So Wednesday just won't be the day that they're checking in. So now if we're talking about pre-K, we want to talk about kindergarten. And although our kindergarten students are now engaging in live Google Meets, which allows them to see their teacher and peers, nothing truly can replace the expertise of a teacher. And through our in-person and hybrid learning model, our students would be able to engage in hands-on learning, social and emotional learning, and really receiving targeted instruction based on their individual needs. And more importantly, also building a relationship with their teacher and their peers as well. All this, though, is prefaced based on the data. As Laura did a great job of showing the multiple graphs that affect Gloucester County and particularly the Southwest region, we will continue to monitor that data to make our decision regarding bringing in kindergarten October 19th a possibility. We want the numbers to remain low. If the numbers remain low, our goal is to bring back kindergarten a week after pre-K would start, which will be on October 12th. Here's a sample of a kindergarten AM schedule, again, at Center Square School. So pre-K and K follow that 4-day-a-week, 2-hour-and-a-half in-person model. So here's an example of a kindergarten AM session. You'll see when the students are starting, still engaged in the asynchronous lessons. They still will be engaged in Google Classroom. All those things will still take place as far as on Wednesdays, but also on the times that they are not engaged in person learning. The PM schedule is also reflective of that. If I'm a PM student, my remote learning is happening in the morning. And then when I come into school, I'm having live interactions with my teachers. And again, when students engage in a Wednesday, which is remote learning, here's a sample of what they will be experiencing. They also would have their live Italian, because in kindergarten they have Italian, and they would have their live PE taking place during that particular time in the afternoon, based on their schedule for the teachers. We wanted to present a graphic to show you or share with you what our thoughts were. Again, pending a board approval this evening, our goal is we need to find out how many parents are willing to bring their children or have their children coming for in-person. Which parents are still going to opt for remote learning? We also need to do the same thing for our staff members to find out which staff members will be able to come in for in-person learning and which staff members may have to opt out for that. And then once we get that information from families, that's going to be key in regarding our busing. We still want to offer the alternate busing for our families who need daycares, and so providing pickup and drop off for students who are attending local daycares within Logan Township. Our pre-K teachers and aides will re-enter the building on September 28th, which will give our pre-K teachers at least 2 weeks. So a little bit about Center Square School. I did some transition of teachers. I wanted to have at least I wanted to have one whole wing of the building to be entirely pre-K. And the other side would have K in one, but there are 2 pre-K classes over there. We're very fortunate, to have 9 pre-K classrooms. And then if we add on to Allison Shemansky PSC classroom, we have 10 pre-K classrooms in our entire school. So we're really excited about that about that option that we have this year. But it's important for our teachers to be able to get in, to set up their classrooms in a unique way that supports social distancing, mask wearing, health and safety of our students, as well as our staff. And then what we will do is bring in our aides. Our aides are going to be so instrumental in supporting our Restart program for our pre-K and K, because the aides coming in will be able to provide the sanitation of countertops and materials that students are using. What we originally have done in pre-K and K, we know that we cannot do that. We can't have shared markers and shared crayons and those types of things, but really sanitizing the material. So when those PM students come in, the room is ready to go for those students as well.
Bev, can you back up? Excuse me, Bev, for interrupting. I just want to bring the board's attention to one other thing that we want to look for board approval tonight, in that the child study team is looking to begin evaluating students in person, one-on-one. And we were hoping, I think that's included in the motion tonight, and that's also on the timeline. I just wanted to mention that.
So this slide kind of summarizes what we're asking and what our focus is, really on in-person instruction. Virtual instruction for our highest needs of students has some limitations that was alluded to in the presentation. The high school curriculum really thrives on teachers building relationships with students and students building relationships with others, feedback and interaction. Our transition plan supports the importance of active learning. Our students at 3, 4, and 5 years of age need to engage in active learning. That is part of the ways that they learn. And being able to come into our building for 2.5 hours for 4 days a week really would help support those significant needs that we know are developmentally appropriate for them.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate, if you go back, Sarah, just to summarize the importance of in-person instruction for the highest needs students with disabilities, how imperative that is, and how it's essential for a thorough IEP implementation, allows for related services to resume, and for multisensory specialized instruction.
Okay, next slide. So I'm going to sum it up and saying, if we go back to some of our concerns from August, one of the issues were nursing and the staffing of our nurses. What we're going to do with bringing back our special needs students in both in over at LES and LEMS is that we will have one part-time nurse at LEMS overseeing the health and safety of our special needs population, and 2 nurses will be working together when our pre-K students come back on October 12th and our kindergarten students come back on October 19th, so they can work together to oversee entrances, screenings, making sure we're following proper health protocol, so they learn from each other, and they can and so they'll be supportive of each other, so that when the nurse goes back to LEMS, she'll have learned from what took place at Center Square. So that, we think, is a positive. If you go to the next slide, another concern from August was transportation. Well, because of the PEA funds, we have budgeted for an aide to be on each of our Center Square buses. So that aide will help to make sure that students wear masks on the bus and keep socially distanced. So by bringing just pre-K and K, we'll be able to oversee that. And then if you go to the next slide, the other concern was cleaning facilities. Our pre-K and K aides, we have aides in those classes, so they'll be able to assist in cleaning between the morning cohort and the afternoon cohort, including cleaning countertops and materials and so forth. So the custodians will be taking care of the bathrooms. The aides will be helping by doing the countertops and materials. And we think that we're going to be able to monitor and see if that is able to be done. So basically, by bringing back these smaller groups of students, we will be able to oversee whether or not the plan that is on paper we can actually put into practice for these few groups of students. So we're moving to the next slide, and that is our board motion tonight. That I am asking you to approve the transition plan to bring back our individual in-person child study team testing as of this coming Monday, as Laura referenced, to bring our hybrid instruction of our pre-K and our special needs self-contained students back as of October 12th, and then if all that is successful and our COVID numbers remain low for the county, as particularly for that age group, if we could bring back our kindergarten children as of October 19th. That's the end of our presentation. If the board has any questions, we are here to respond to them.
I think, speaking at least for myself, I think we all want to get back to some sense of normalcy in the district, and I think this phased approach works out fairly well, as long as the numbers continue to be going down and we can do this safely.
I do have two questions. First of all, what would the impact be on specifically kindergartners whose parents decide to continue with remote instruction? What I mean by that is, they will have spent, let's say, about a month and a half getting to know their teacher and their classmates on Zoom or on Google Meet. And then if the other classmates go back into school and they stay remote, does it change the classes that they're in? Does it change their teachers? When do they go on Google Meet versus when the other kids are in there? There's a lot of questions about that.
Bev, do you want to address that, or do you want me to?
Yeah, so great question. Thank you, Mrs. Hill. Our goal is for the students to remain with their same teacher. What we don't want to do is engage in a shifting of students around. That's not healthy for the relationship. That's not healthy for the families. We do know that it's important for us to give parents options. So if a student or if the parents decide on remote, they will stay with the same teacher. If the child is coming in for a hybrid or in person, they will have the same teacher. We are going to be continuing to work with our teachers in reference to remote learning and engaging in a streaming of classrooms and learning experiences. That's going to be key as we navigate our reentry back, because that's the same question, Mrs. Hill, that's going to be for 1st to 8th, right? So their 1st to 8th are in a different type of situation. They have 2 days on, 3 days off. There's still going to be some students who are not attending in person and will engage in remote. So it's great for us to be able to navigate this with kindergarten and learn from this experience, and then to be able to support the reentry of our 1st to 8th grade students.
Right. Okay. And then on the flip side of that, and maybe you have kind of answered this, but I'm not sure, is what if that teacher that they're with now needs to remain remote for whatever the reason might be, whether it's a medical accommodation, a childcare accommodation, or whatever the reason might be. The teacher needs to remain remote, but then some of the students are going back and some of the students are remaining remote. So how would that look?
I'll answer that for Mrs. Green, unless Mrs. Green, you want to, but we won't know that until we survey our students, our parents, to see which children are coming back, and then really talk with our staff to see which teachers are able to come back or which teachers have extenuating circumstances they can't. So I don't like to say this normally, but I don't have all the answers. And we just really have to we have to have the motion to say that we are committed to trying to bring back a good number of students based on parents and the board's desire to have them back and to move as close to getting back to hybrid and in person as possible, and then go with that based on the information we receive back from students, parents, and staff. So Lene, that's the best I can tell you is we'll work with it. We don't know until we get the survey back.
Okay, and you'll be sharing that with us in the memos?
Absolutely. Every step of the way.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, this is Kim. I don't think I really have well, I guess I have a question, but I'm going to start it with more of a comment. So, just playing devil's advocate here, in regards to the special needs population. So I totally get why it's imperative for them to be in the building, to be in front of their teachers. I totally understand the special nature of their situations. What I would caution is that it is very clear and that you use the proper wording in regards to why this group is set apart and why they need to be in the building. Because for this particular presentation, I heard a lot of different things, and some of them could apply to a non-special needs population. And so you're going to get people who are not going to understand, but I think you might get less people who won't understand if you are tried and true to the reasons why that particular, and make sure that they're specific to that particular population, and someone cannot manipulate that.
Thanks, Mrs. Reed. You know what I did not include in my presentation, but what we did back when we were proposing to the community our hybrid models was the distinction of, I believe we referred to them as cohort D, and that these students have on their IEPs listed as the LLD, the language learning disabilities classroom, and or the multiple disabilities classroom for 2 or more core subjects on their IEP as students that would be eligible. So we're really just using the IEP. The students were placed in these classrooms because of the complex needs, and that's discussed at the annual review meeting, and that is something that a decision, it's a more restrictive environment, so it's a very serious decision, but that is indicated on their IEPs. But you're right. You're right. A lot of these things that I mentioned are some things that other students are experiencing as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and my other question, I think you answered, but I just want to make sure I'm clear. Are you using both buildings, or are you only using CSS?
Yes, both buildings.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, over at LEMS, Kim, would be the MD class and the 2 LLD classes, right, Laura?
Yes, that's correct.
And over at Center Square would be the PSD class along with the pre-K and K.
Okay. I think at first I was confused because Laura and Bev were tag teaming, so I thought it was just restricted to CSS, but then I think someone said something. I think it was you, Pat, when you were talking about the nursing staff. So I just wanted to be clear.
Yes. Yeah. I apologize, but Laura really is taking the bull by the horn with this because they are her, they're directly the students, even though they're at LEMS. The LLD and the MD classes are directly her responsibility.
Okay. Any other board questions on this?
Yes, Mrs. Flynn, has there been any consideration about addressing the needs of the gifted and talented students during remote instruction?
Yes, Mr. Conklin and I have met, and we are coming up with a remote plan. We have some ideas, and we are actually going to be setting up our first committee meeting to discuss the students that will be participating, and then discuss the beginning of programming. So the parents will be informed when that begins.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I had a question. This is Miss Roan. I was wondering, for the parents who may decide to continue with remote learning for their students, if there could be a little bit more detail and maybe schedules going forth for what that might look like to help the parents with their schedules when they're doing the surveys, when they're reporting on their decision for remote versus going into the hybrid model.
Yeah, Mr. Rowan, before I hand this over to Mrs. Green to respond to that, I just will say to you that we hope to be as explicit as we can with not having all the answers, but we know that we need to be, we've talked about this actually yesterday when I met with a group of about 20 staff members when we talked about the other grade levels eventually moving back to hybrid, that even though parents will still have the ability to choose remote learning. Once hybrid learning goes into place, remote learning is going to look a little bit different for those children who stay at home. So I agree with you. We need to be as specific as possible because right now the teacher's responsibility is all focused on children who are remote. That's the full response. All their focus is on that. When we go back to hybrid and students are coming in, that'll be split somewhat. And so it will look a little different. So I think you're right. I know you're right in the fact that we need to be pretty explicit with that when we're sharing that with parents, that it might not be exactly the same as it is occurring right now. Deb, did you want
Yeah,
to
and just to echo what Mrs. Haney said, that is very true. Our parents who are selecting remote, we want to make sure that they understand that remote, what it looks like now, will be different once we start the in-person learning. We will make sure that parents who select remote will have the schedules along with those parents who may select in-person, because that's going to be important to navigate themselves and their families as well. And also if they need to have their child go to a daycare facility. That's why we wanted to give parents a good amount of time to be able to make their decision, but also to, if they need to make changes with daycares and those types of things, a time frame that they can navigate and make sure that those things take place. But you're correct that the remote learning that our kindergarten students receive now is not going to look the same when we engage in person, because our teachers would have to support the in-person students. And remember, they're doing an AM and PM. It's not like 2 days a week. They're 4 days a week. And then support our students who are remote as well.
Okay,
but
thank you.
I think Mrs. Rowan makes a very good point, and I just want to make sure that I'm clear on the response. So those schedules or what that's going to look like is going to come out before the survey? Because it's very difficult to make a decision without knowing what it looks like first.
Right, and that's why we that's why we in the presentation wanted to show you the schedules. I do think that that's important for families to be able to make a decision. I think what we're talking about though is the difference and the change also and what remote looks like. You can have a remote schedule, and if I think that remote is going to look like what it looks like now, that's really not the case. And I think that's where we want to also make sure that families are truly informed and what remote once we start with kindergarten October 19th, will look like compared to what remote looks like now.
Renee, to be fair and straightforward, as we usually always try to be, we don't, again, it's going to be up in the air. So we might even have to send out 2 surveys, one a more immediate right now I'm looking at, that, based on the board motion, if you approve tonight, we're looking to open pre-K and K in October. Might you be interested? And then when we get our initial survey results back, we might have an idea of how many's going to go remote, how many's not. When we get our initial results back from our staff, the same thing. And then we would be more detailed before they make that commitment. So I could see right now, I don't want to lead you in the wrong direction. I don't think we have all the answers by September 18th, which is when we want to get the initial survey out. So I think it's going to be maybe a multi-step survey, to be fair. So, because we don't know.
Okay.
Hi, this is Kim. So I understand that I understand the urgency, but I think that you have to realize that even with a survey, it's not real time. And if you don't have all the answers, then how do you expect the people who are responding to the survey to be able to make all the decisions? And so I understand that you guys, this is a really tough situation, and I know that this is unprecedented. It's not fun, but I
I'm not sure that this has been given the amount of time that it needs, because I'll be very frank, this doesn't apply to my kids right now, but it sounds like any kid who doesn't choose to come into the building when given that opportunity is going to miss out. You don't know yet how they're going to miss out, but it sounds like they're going to miss out. And that is not a good message. Whether it's intentional, and I firmly don't believe it is intentional, but it feels that way.
The response I would have to that, Kim, is that possibly what we might do in reaction to what you just said is not rush to get the survey out by this Friday, which was our original plan, and to possibly cement, now if we do get board approval, cement our plan a little bit more and be more explicit in that. But I do also know that a parent responding saying they are or not interested, or are not interested in going in hybrid or remote, does not mean that they have to stay with that forever. So as much as we want to have all the answers, we also want to be accommodating that parents change their minds. So we could probably give us a little more time so that we are more explicit in providing as much detail as possible. So even though parents giving us feedback in the survey doesn't make that as a commitment, it does give us more information.
Well, I think that could be part of the survey where you just let parents know that they're not committing to either or. You're just trying to get some information at this point.
Right. That would be the first one.
Yeah, this is the last thing I'm going to say about this, because I know you want to make the motion and I'm not going to belabor it, but it's not a commitment thing. It's not about commitment. It's a big decision for you all as well as a big decision for them. And I think, Pat, what you suggested in regards to maybe not speeding the survey and taking the remaining, 2 days of this week to delve a little bit deeper and think a little bit more, so that when you craft the content for the survey, you just have to be as detailed as possible. And if people don't read, they don't read, but they can't accuse you of not providing them with everything that you possibly could to help them make an informed and timely decision.
Kim, as always, I appreciate that insight, and I really do.
Any other discussion on this item? If not, we'll move on to the rest of the agenda. So, Pat, administrative report?
Not other than what is listed with the enrollment for September.
Okay. All right, the Finance Committee met on Monday evening virtually, and we went over the bill list and we went over the financial reports as listed, and we're recommending that the board adopt them. Okay. You want to go down the rest of the agenda items, and I'll open up the meeting to the public. That's way too fast.
Sorry.
That's okay. Most of the agenda items are contracts for special needs children, bus transportation.
It's been up on the website.
Okay. Then I'll open up the meeting to the public for any questions they might want to ask regarding the agenda or any other items they want to talk about.
Our first question is from Jolyn Naylor, 834 Windsor Drive. Will the teacher who is providing in-person instruction also be providing remote instruction? If not, students would need to have a new teacher for remote instruction if they decide to remain remote, correct?
Jolyn is speaking for, I would think that she's asking from a third grade point of view. We are still working on the 1 through 8 hybrid model. Yesterday, we met with 20 staff members to get input from the staff members on the 3 different proposed hybrid models for 1st through 8th grade. So I don't want to comment on 1st through 8th because that is still something that's in discussion with staff members trying to make a decision what is best for them. Bev, do you want to comment on for pre-K and K?
Sorry, I was just unmuting myself. Yeah, so that is those are things that we have continued to think about as we're navigating really for K, because I think this question really gears toward K, because remember pre-K really has their pre-recorded lessons, and to be able to make sure that our kindergarten students continue to have the same teacher for remote if the parent is selecting remote, or if it is in person, and being able to navigate the way that we can provide solid instruction for the families who have selected to have remote only. And that's why engaging in ongoing conversations with staff is going to be key as we continue to map out our plan.
Okay, the next question is from Allison Dickey, a staff member. What will virtual learning look like if a family should choose to keep their kindergartner home instead of returning to hybrid?
And so if a parent decides on remote, they will follow the AM session of the kindergarten, the schedule that we have. So those students will participate in the AM session, regardless if their last name is A to L or M to Z. And that's where we would have the streaming of the classrooms, so the students can be involved in the direct instruction that's taking place in the particular classrooms. But any families who select remote, they will be attending the AM session.
Again, from Jolyn Naylor, 834 Windsor Drive. She's clarifying that she's referring to CSS in her questions. I strongly believe that you should have a detailed remote plan prior to putting out a survey to parents. You need to be clear about the missing pieces to your plan. Without knowing which teachers will be present, you cannot ask parents to make a choice. They need to know that their child's teacher will most likely change unless the child's teacher remains the same, whether or not they choose remote or in-person learning.
Thank you, Jolyn.
That's all the questions.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for the people who asked questions. Any additional board questions on any of the agenda items? Pat, do you want to change any of the I guess there's the extra items, which is the.
Yeah. Can you bring up the added agenda item number 1? Okay, so this is what was listed on the last slide, and this is what I'm going to be asking you to vote on: is motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation that we are able to bring in our special needs students who need evaluations on an individual basis to start that type of testing in person as of September 19th, as of October 12th, to make available hybrid instruction for pre-K and for the special needs self-contained class, and that would be the MD class, the 2 LLD classes at LEMS, and the PSD class at Center Square. And then finally, to have hybrid instruction to begin as early as October 19th for kindergarten students. That would be the only agenda item that I would be suggesting tonight, Frank.
Okay. And based on the comments from Kim and the parents, we'll be able to meet the timeframes if they're for the additional items they're asking.
I believe that we still can meet those timeframes. So we said as early as October 12th. No, put that in because we don't know what's going to happen. Okay. So that's our goal, is to have October 12th for pre-K and special needs students, and October 19th for the kindergarten students. But I would just put that is as early as, because then it could be later than that if we don't meet those, if we just can't do it.
Okay. All right, then let's go. We need a motion then.
What about added agenda number 2? Do you mean
added agenda item number 1? That's it.
All right, we need a motion then to accept the minutes as listed, the financial report that's listed, the bill list, and all of the agenda items, including the added agenda item.
So moved, Kristen.
And a second?
Second.
And a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Donnelly,
Yes.
Mrs. Kegler,
Yes.
Dr. Bowen,
Yes.
Mrs. Hill,
No on the added agenda item, yes on the others.
Mrs. Lombardo,
Yes.
Mrs. Mason,
Yes.
Mrs. Reed,
No on the added agenda item, and yes, everything else.
Mrs. Roan,
Yes to all items except the added agenda item.
Mr. Russell,
Yes.
Did you get Caroline, Sarah?
Yep.
Okay, this is come now. All right, moving on to committees. Nothing for Gloucester County School Boards. Caroline, anything for New Jersey School Boards?
Well, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so first, I just wanted to say I didn't comment on the equity team's job, but I do want them to know that I appreciate the fact that they really get the big picture. And Pat, and you know how proud I am of what we've done in this area. So I want them to know that I really appreciate their getting the big picture. They get the need for it, and they know what the effect it's going to have on all students, and that's all caps. I wanted to get that in. The second thing I wanted to give is information about children and human services. This came through our legislative committee, and you may know that they were going to stop the funding for that. This is the school services that are school-based for our youth services. And I'm not sure which programs we have, but there's a resolution that they have put out because they want the funding to be extended. And if you read any of the New Jersey school boards, you understand what I'm saying and how important this is, because these services and this funding had to do with working with kids who, the suicide prevention, drug addiction, and that kind of thing. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. And the third thing, this is really not much, but just to note that our governmental relations director, Mike Vranchik, has retired, and we have a new one, and that's Jonathan Pushkin, who was originally the legislative not director, but he was our agent for legislative details and so on. That's what I have for you.
Carolyn, can I respond to your initial comment? I always appreciate your ongoing nudging of us to move to the direction of where we're going right now. And just to reference this to everyone and to the community, I am extremely proud that we are a district that we can be honest and as to where we are and where we want to go. And I believe we are unique in that way, that we're being honest, being very forthright in the disparity in our discipline data, but we know the journey we have to keep on moving forward. And I do appreciate the support of the board and especially you, Carolyn.
Thanks. I appreciate you too. I really do. Thanks. That's all I have, Frank.
Thanks, Carolyn. Kristen, anything on home and school?
I do have stuff. I'm happy to report that after the last board meeting, I was able to connect with Katie Pugnata, our home and school co-president. Due to the schools going remote on 3/16 last year, an election never took place in the spring. So their September board meeting focused on holding a special election due to the fact that the buildings were closed. and when the elections are usually held. So they created an amendment to their bylaws, which they voted and passed, that they would be able to do alternative elections. So a special election will be held on October 19th at 7:30. Since the buildings are closed, they're looking to set up a Google Meet, and that information will go out to the public once it's confirmed. They're working on updating the nomination form to be sent out with school being closed, including a current board member's address for nomination forms to be mailed to or delivered to instead of the school, as well as being sent back virtually. All current board member positions are open due to their terms ending. The current treasurer and co-president are running for re-election. 2 of the board members are leaving because their students are no longer in the district. And then the remaining board members are running for positions, as well as they're needing to the need to adjust due to any vacancies for people moving around. So that was their update for September.
Thanks, Kristen.
No problem.
Anything else?
Not for me.
Okay, Kingsway's next board meeting is the 24th of this month. The agenda is not out yet, so I have no information at this point to let you know. But if anything changes, I will get back to you via email. Any other comments from the board members? All right, we need a motion to adjourn. Thank you all for coming out tonight.
I move we adjourn.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.